Hi friends, I have a fun DIY project for you today. We are repurposing this vintage window into a gorgeous piece of home decor. If you are new here, welcome. If you've watched our videos before, thanks so much for coming back. My name is Cindy and I'm from the blog ReinventedDelaware.com. Now let's get started with this DIY upcycled home decor project. Let's just start off by saying this is not the first time that I have upcycled and repurposed an old window. We've done lots of projects with old windows that we have sold when we had a vendor booth. Now this particular window had been used in a previous project here in my home office. I used it as a content calendar. It was a place that I could track all my ideas for blog posts and for YouTube videos, and it worked out great, and I used that system for a long time. Now I'm using a different system, but I did create a video showing you how to use a window as a scheduler, and it's not necessarily for a blogger or a YouTuber. Anyone could use an old window in this method. So I'm going to link that video here up in the card so you can watch that when you're finished watching this upcycled and repurposed window project. I'll be using several supplies for this project, and I'll have them all listed below down in the description, as well as the first comment below this video. If you scroll down, you'll see that section. The first step in any project is to clean it. So I grabbed my dust buster and I got off all the little dust bunnies, and then I used a dry paper towel and some alcohol, just plain rubbing alcohol, and cleaned that glass till it was streaky clean. Then I found the center of my window. Now my window is big. You'll see in the blog post just how big it is. But to find the center, here's an easy thing to do. Grab a seamstress measuring tape and stretch it across, and then fold it directly in half, and right there is your halfway point. You don't have to do any math with fractions or measuring or remembering or none of that. I mean, this is the easy way. You draw a little pencil mark and there's your center. I forgot to mention that I'm using transfer paper, but to find the transfer paper center, just simply fold it in half at the edge where it's going to meet up the halfway point of the window, and then just with your finger fold it a little bit, put a little crease, then you can line up those two marks and you know that you've got it centered. Now I had a little mishap with my centering, so stay tuned all the way through to the end to see how I resolve that problem. Applying one of these decorative transfers to glass is super easy. I just grabbed this clear coat. I have this extra coat by Dixie Belle on hand, so once I knew where the transfer was going to lay on the glass, I put down an even coat of the clear coat, of that top coat, and then I laid down that first section. Now, I didn't top coat the entire area. The window is big, the transfer is large, and I wanted to work in small sections. So I just did that top area, and then I smoothed it down, and then I did the next area and I smoothed it down, and I just went across and did it that way. Now my paper wrinkled up on me a little bit, and that was okay with me because the design and the window are very vintage looking. So I did not want a pristine look. You'll see here some of the folds, some of the areas where it kind of crinkled up. I smoothed it down as best I could, but I actually prefer this look because for me, it makes the whole thing look amazing. Now you can see that I tore that transfer because I was just rubbing it too hard and I tore a little spot, but that's okay. We're gonna fix that problem too. Once I had that transfer piece completely down, I went back over it with more of the clear coat to seal it all in. And this was the perfect opportunity to fix my little mishap. There on the right, you can see where I tore it. Well, as I was coating it with the clear coat, I realized that it had just kind of folded up a little bit, but plus I had that piece on my finger. So I could just take the little pieces and I kind of tucked them back in, and I used the brush to fold it, unfold the paper, and I pretty much covered up that hole completely. Now there were still some areas that you could see through the glass, so I still have another fix for that problem later in the video. You'll also notice that I used a crisscross crosshatch kind of pattern with my paintbrush. I used that brush and I went in all different directions and kept changing the angle of my hand so that it would create some texture on the top surface. And I not only covered the transfer, I also put a coat of it on the entire piece of glass. You can't see it from this angle, but because my center points didn't match up exactly, that meant my edges did not match up exactly. So I grabbed another supply that I had on hand. Actually, I had this wood you bend on hand for a different project, but that's kind of how it goes. You see what you have on hand and you just use it. So this is a really cool product. It's actually made of wood shavings or dust or something. I'm not really sure, but it's actual wood formed into these beautiful designs. You do have to be careful when you're unwinding it. So you grab a hair dryer and put it on a nice warm setting, and you just get that thing nice and warm so that it will start to unravel and unroll. If you don't do this step, it will break. So you have to be careful. Now, if it breaks, you can still glue it and kind of repair it back together, and you'll never know the difference. So don't worry too much if you do, but try your best to use the heat of that hair dryer to soften it and allow it to unroll. Once this trim was flat in the area that I needed it to be for each section, I went ahead and used my scissors and I cut it. And I cut extra because I will be mitering these corners, and I'd rather have a little bit extra than not enough. Then I grabbed this metal square. This was an important step because this wood you bend is kind of flexible as you're molding it and softening it with the hair dryer, and I wanted to make sure I had a nice straight edge. So that metal square really helped it to stay nice and straight. Plus I used that square on all of the sections to make sure that it was the same width from the edge of the wooden part of the window and meeting up with that transfer. I'm trying to explain this, it's better to watch. That metal square really did come in handy though. So if you have one, go ahead and grab it. I wanted the corners to be mitered. So once I had all of the sections cut with excess, you can see the excess there, I laid them over top of one another and just matched up the inside corner with the outside, and that basically gives you the miter, and that's where I cut. And it did a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but that's okay. The miter looks good enough for me. Let's get this trim painted. I grabbed this color called Umber. It's a deep, rich chocolate brown that makes me think of a dark Dove chocolate. Oh my goodness, have you had those before? So if I just made you think about grabbing a piece of chocolate, I'm sorry, and you're welcome, all rolled up into one. And in the meantime, I'm gonna get this painted. Now listen, if you use one of these small brushes, it just makes the task super easy. It's easy to get the bristles into the details of this trim, plus it's super easy to clean up. So I painted all 6 pieces, and I only needed to apply 1 coat, and then I allowed them to dry. Once the paint was dry, I grabbed this little can of gold gilding wax and that same little paintbrush. It was dried and clean and all that. And you just get on a very little bit. You do not need much of this gilding wax, and you just lightly use the side of your brush and brush over top of the detail. Now I've used this gilding wax on so many projects. I'm going to pop in some pictures. I've used it on an old picture, and by the way, it comes in several colors, so you can create all different effects like I did with this old silver pitcher that was damaged. I've used it on frames, on lamps, all sorts of projects, and I'll have all those videos linked down below so you can watch each one. Typically you would use wood glue to adhere this trim to a surface, but because I was attaching it to glass, I just wanted to be extra sure that it was going to stick well. So instead I grabbed my E6000 and my hot glue gun. So I dabbed on little bits of the E6000, just making little dots, and then I went back with the glue gun and I put dots of glue, hot glue, between the dots of the E6000. The hot glue will set and cure quickly, and it will hold this down flat, while the E6000 is going to take several hours to dry and cure and hold it securely. So the hot glue is kind of working like a clamp in that it's holding it still for me while that regular E6000 sets up. Now remember that I had that little mishap at the beginning where I tore that decoupage paper, and it's time to fix it. So what I did, I grabbed several paint colors that I have on hand that also coordinate with the colors that are in this decoupage paper. I got all the supplies from Dixie, Belle, so those colors are going to kind of intermix, and I love the idea of being able to use the colors that they offer with the decoupage papers that they have, because you're guaranteed that the colors are going to match. Now I did have to mix up the green that was inside, that was on this decoupage paper, because I didn't have any on hand. And Dixie Belle has a color mixing chart online that you can take the colors that you have on hand and mix them digitally to find the color that you need. It worked out perfect. I'll leave a link to that down below. It's a great resource. Anyway, I mixed that umber color with one of the greens that I had. I think it was called English Ivy, until I got the green color that is in the decoupage paper on the front. And I was going to just use little bits of that to dab over the area where the tear was. But then I decided to go ahead and do the dabbing technique to this whole thing, because I did not like the glass that was framing the decorative trim and the decoupage paper. It was clear, you could see right through it. I didn't like it. So I just grabbed several paintbrushes and several colors, and I just used this little dabbing technique. I don't know if you remember the 90s when we were doing all these faux finishes on the walls. Well, this was one of the techniques that we would do. We would take several colors and we would do this dabbing technique on walls to create this mottled kind of textured look. We all loved it then. I loved it then. It's not my thing now, but that technique worked out perfectly for the framing of this decoupage paper art that I've made from this old vintage window. I used this paint dabbing technique over both sections of the glass, all over, with these variety of colors. Now if the paint starts to dry out, use that dry misting bottle and dampen the area, and that will help you to blend the colors even more if that's what you want to do. I did that in a few areas. I only applied one coat of the dabbing technique because my plan is to paint the backside completely in all one color to create this chalkboard on the other side. I'm going to use that vintage green color, like from back in the 50s when chalkboards were the green color, and I'll just completely cover it in that color so that I have this chalkboard that I can flip and reverse this piece to the other side and use it for other seasons. I can write, welcome. I can draw little pumpkins when the fall season comes on or whatever, using some chalk. But on the spring and summer months, I can use this design and it'll just be so pretty on our front porch. If you want to make this project but you don't have a window just laying around like I did, I just want to encourage you to go find one. You can shop at estate sales, yard sales, you can go to an auction. I mean, you can just find windows like this all over. So keep your eye out and start a little collection. And I don't know if you know, but I collected a bunch of windows and we built a little greenhouse garden shed in our backyard. I'll pop in a picture of that video, and I've been working on decorating it with all sorts of vintage goodies and using vintage windows. Old windows are so much fun to upcycle and repurpose, and it keeps them out of the dump. Let's just find ways to keep things out of the trash from piling up and use these pieces to decorate our homes. Now this window decor project is on our front porch, and I just realized I did not even show you my summer refresh of our front porch. So I'm going to give you a little tour of our front porch to show you how I have it styled here. And you're going to notice something. I have that beautiful topiary design in that old window. I still have my springtime wreath on the door, and then I have my summertime welcome sign that can also blend right into fall. Now I have all of those projects on my blog, including that welcome sign and that spring wreath that's on the front door. So I'll be sure to link those blog posts down below in the description. As you look on our front porch, you're going to notice that I have those chains hanging from the very top. That's because the hanging planter holders are down on the ground. It had rained the night before, and we like to set them down so that they get a good solid rain over top, and I just forgot to put them back up. They're a little sad looking right now because the flowers are really spent. I need to cut them back, but you'll notice that they are chicken feeders that we've turned into hanging plant holders. I just love them. By the way, did you guys have a terrible problem with aphids this year? They have decimated so many of my shrubs. These are crepe myrtle shrubs, just completely stripped them. All the leaves fell off. They did not bloom this year. They've eaten my mums. They've eaten, not my mums, I'm sorry, my marigolds. They've eaten the impatiens. They attacked one of my ferns. They've just been terrible. If you've watched any of our videos, you probably recognize a lot of these projects. We have that lamp that hangs over that little table. We have that chair that we painted over in our Facebook group. By the way, it's called Recreate and Decorate with Reinvented Delaware. I'd love for you to join us over there and share your projects with me. I would just love to see them. If you spot any projects that we've done here on our channel, please let me know down in the comments which one is your favorite. Is it that milk can? How about that little thrift store lantern that we painted and added a transfer to? Is it, let's see, what else? That hanging lamp over top of the table? Or I don't know, which project do you see that you love and that was your favorite? Be sure to check out my blog at reinventeddelaware.com. I share lots of tutorials over there of the projects that you've seen, some here on YouTube and some that I have not shared here on YouTube. I'll link that down below in the description and in the first comment so that you can easily find it. Let's take a look at the before shot of this window and then the after shot of what we did to it with a little bit of time, some paint, and a beautiful piece of decoupage paper. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.